Jinnah of Pakistan by Stanley Wolpert. Chapter 18 Simla Revisited, 1946. The mission wired Attlee that the situation has taken a turn for the worse. Congress proposed to make an attack on the grouping proposal and they object to parity in the interim executive. These 2 points may be crucial in securing Muslim cooperation. We may therefore be faced before long with threat of direct action by Congress if we do not give way to their demands. We are giving consideration to what our policy should be in that event. While the mission waited for the League to meet, favorable reports of Muslim reactions came in from the Punjab. But communal tensions and fever kept mounting, especially in large cities like Karachi, where the accidental dropping of an onion from a veranda by a child nearly started a communal fracas, reported the Viceroy. If the Muslim League were to reject the scheme, there would undoubtedly be widespread communal riots. Governor Sir Frederick Burrows of Bengal informed the mission on May 24th that Bengal Hindus and Muslims were both much relieved that their province would not have to be partitioned if the plan were accepted. He warned, however, that rejection of the proposals by Jinnah would lead to resignation of the League ministry and serve as a signal for a jihad. There had already been serious situations in Chittagong, started by students protesting against the rejection of Pakistan, controlled only because the Muslim ministers going personally to that port to exert mollifying influence. Woodrow Wyatt spoke with Jinnah on Friday, May 24th, and was informed by Quaid-e-Azam that what was required was a surgical operation. Jinnah must have known by then that his lungs were incurable through simple medication. He offered to transmit some advice to the mission through Major Wyatt as to how they should proceed if he thought the mission would not breach his confidence. Wyatt reassured him on the confidentiality point and reported his belief that what Jinnah wanted to tell the mission was that the British should remain as the binding forces in the Indian centre for some 15 years and deal with the defence and the foreign affairs for Pakistan and Hindustan, consulting the prime ministers of each state. This seemed a sensible solution of Jinnah's point of view, since that would have created the least havoc and provided the most security and stability to all Indians, especially the minorities. He dared not say it in public, of course, and he did not trust Cripps to keep it from Nehru. Nor was he certain that Pethick Lawrence would not tip his hand to Gandhi. Yet, with time running out and his energy level as low as it was, Jinnah obviously felt almost desperate to convey this advice to the mission before it was too late. He was very anxious, Wyatt noted, about the strong Muslim reaction against the mission's statement, and thus most hesitant to support it openly. Wyatt cleverly concluded by asking Jinnah, in view of all that he had said and sensed from his mood and manner, whether the League's working committee might not possibly pass a resolution on the following lines. The British had exceeded their brief in pronouncing on the merits of Pakistan. They had no business to turn down what millions of people wanted. Their analysis of Pakistan was outrageous. But the Muslims had never expected the British to give them Pakistan. They had never expected anyone to give them Pakistan. They knew that they had to get it by their own strong arm. The scheme outlined in the cabinet mission statement was impracticable and could not work. But nevertheless, in order to show that they would give it a trial, although they knew that the machinery could not function, they would accept the statement and would not go out of their way to sabotage the procedure. But they would accept the statement as the first step on the road to Pakistan. At this proposition, he was delighted and said, "That's it, you've got it, and I am completely convinced that that is what the Muslim League will do." Wyatt, quite rightly, most presciently predicted. Cripps is still in hospital, though better, and Alexander is gone to Ceylon to inspect the fleet. Pethick Lawrence wrote Attlee on May 26th. What is going to happen? I don't know. Gandhi is provokingly enigmatic and blows hot and cold. Azad, Nehru, and Jinnah, I think all want a settlement, but already we are up against the second hurdle. Azad and Nehru and the Congress generally are willing to waive any formal or legal change in the interim constitution, but they want almost absolute power in reality, and they want something to be able to say about it to their people. Jinnah not only does not want the viceroy to relinquish his authority, but he positively wants him to retain it. The viceroy is now, I think, convinced that he must go to the limit of what is possible in satisfying the Congress. I have not abandoned hope that we may surmount this difficulty, and that both Congress and Muslim League may both express a grudging quiescence in our plan sufficient to enable us to go ahead with summoning the Constituent Assembly on or before June 15th. There are many people who would welcome our positively getting on with the job, not least among them Pethick Lawrence himself. Jinnah returned to New Delhi on June 2nd, and Wavell met him the following morning. Finding him in good heart, he said that he could not give me names for the interim government until after he had seen his council. But I got the impression that the Muslim League would probably come in. He then went on to complain that the Muslims had not been given parity in the union legislature and stressed that the great concession he had made in agreeing to a union at all. He then asked what we should do if the Muslim League came in and Congress refused. I had anticipated this query and had consulted S. I told him that the Muslim League would certainly not suffer by its readiness to work the delegation scheme, and that the intention was to go ahead with any party who would work for it. He asked for something more specific before he met with his working committee at 6 p.m., and I said I could do nothing more without consulting the delegation. He asked me to do so. Wavell got the delegation's permission to give Jinnah a verbal assurance that afternoon. The Muslim League Council met on June 5th, and a secret British intelligence report noted that Mr. Jinnah said that he and other members of the working committee were worried as to what would happen if the Muslim League accepted the proposals and the Congress did not. The Viceroy replied that he would brook no refusal from Congress, and that if they decided against acceptance, he would hand over the interim government to the Muslim League and give them all the support they required. This very point was raised by some members in the council meeting, and Mr. Jinnah took them into confidence and gave the same reply. Next day, Jinnah spoke to his League Council, informing them, "It is now up to you as the Parliament of the Muslim nation to take your decision. I repeat that delay is not good either for the British government or the Hindus. If they love freedom, if they love the independence of India, if they want to be free, then the sooner they realize the better that the quickest way to agree to Pakistan." Jinnah then discussed both internal and external relations, calling upon the Arabs to see that not one more Jew landed in Palestine, condemning the Dutch imperialist hold on Indonesia, and concluded that in India most Hindus had wind in their heads. There is no remedy for a disease of that kind. Where a man is under a delusion, the only place for him is a lunatic asylum. With this delusion, the Hindu is arrogant, tyrannical, and oppressive. But I think all this will sober down. If it does not, then we shall have to do something to make it sober down. Before June 6th ended, the Muslim League Council accepted the cabinet missions plan by a large majority, Wavell noted. Now the real battle begins, and the great question is whether the delegation will stand up to Congress or not. Parity in the interim government may be the main issue. Francis Turnbull launched with Birla on June 6th, reporting how alarmed he was at Jinnah's demand for Muslim League parity in the interim government. Turnbull noted that he thought Congress had come very near to accepting parity at Simla last year, but Birla insisted the situation had been quite different then, requiring an emergency wartime government. And now, with elections having given Congress most of the general seats, there could be no question of parity for the League. Jinnah spent an hour with the Viceroy on June 7th, informing Wavell that he wanted the defense portfolio for himself and foreign affairs and planning for the two of his followers. In the interim government, composed of 5 Muslim Leaguers, 5 Congress members, and only 2 others. It was Jinnah's first positive expression of personal interest in any interim government office and would, unfortunately, be his last. Jinnah asked the Viceroy what would happen to his seat in the Assembly if he became a member of the interim government and said he hoped there was no objection to his remaining President of the Muslim League if he came into the interim government. Nehru and Azad came to speak to the cabinet mission on June 10th, arguing vigorously against parity. Wavell, Alexander, and Pethick Lawrence tried to argue for greater tolerance and more cooperation with the League, but Nehru insisted it was frankly beyond the power of the Congress to agree to parity. Then Gandhi re-entered the scene, letting it be known to Pethick, Lawrence and Cripps through intermediaries that he was willing to see them. Alexander, like Wavell, was completely mistrustful now of Gandhi and all his ways. Cripps suggested that the Viceroy tackle Jinnah and Nehru. Pethick Lawrence wanted to go off to see Gandhi, but the first Sea Lord was dead against it. With his health restored, Cripps came up with the idea of 2 vice presidents on the interim government cabinet, one from each party, Jinnah and Nehru, rotating office. It was also possible under this arrangement to have Nehru and Jinnah as ministers without portfolio. It was agreed that the Viceroy should ask Nehru and Jinnah to come to dinner that evening for a discussion on the position of the interim government. Everyone agreed it was essential to get these 2 leaders to talk before their party positions froze incompatibly. That night, Cripps went personally to persuade Jinnah to meet with Nehru and Wavell the following evening. He spent several hours with Jinnah, alone in his Delhi house, recording an unsigned note of their conversation, which has been incorrectly labeled a note by Major Wyatt, but was clearly the record of this most critical Jinnah-Cripps summit conference that failed. Mr. Jinnah said that he was not prepared to discuss parity with anyone. He had had great opposition in his own party to accepting the mission's proposal. He did not think that opposition was fully appreciated, nor what he had gone through. The only way he had been able to persuade the Muslim League Council and Working Committee to accept the statement was by promising them that he would not join the interim government unless Muslim League had parity with Congress. He was now pledged to that. He could not go back on that. He was not his own master. A singular confession for Jinnah, yet one he knew would appeal to Cripps. He was not prepared to meet Nehru or anyone else from Congress to talk about the interim government until Congress had accepted the mission's proposals. Then any such talk would have to be on the basis of parity. The moment that Congress accepted, he would, of course, be willing to meet Nehru and the Viceroy and put before them the names of his nominees with the suggested portfolios. It was one of Jinnah's key techniques for sparing himself and saving energy to carry on important business by always insisting upon prior acceptance of a principle he deemed vital in any negotiations before taking on the burden of a face-to-face meeting with the other side, especially when he considered the outcome doubtful or had no faith in his opposite number. Jinnah next assured Cripps of how sensible and reasonable he actually was, having just taken so intransigent a stand on this key issue. He expressed shock at having got an expression from whom he does not say that it was being reported that the League's nominees for the interim government would be any old people from the Muslim League Working Committee. Jinnah insisted he wanted the best men. This was an important matter. He was not going to put in as his nominees people who were popular or well known in the Muslim League if they could not do the job. He had many able men in the civil service and he would put some of those in even though no one had ever heard of them. The problem was to get the right man for the right job. He was quite prepared to talk over the portfolios with Nehru and make adjustments with him so that they could get a workable team, which was what was needed. Could anything be more reasonable? Now that Barrister Jinnah re-established his image of sensible moderation in management matters, he could return to his parity demand. But this time, he put the onus of having abandoned parity on Congress. He seemed slightly interested in an idea that had been put to him of an inner cabinet of 6 with parity for Congress and the Muslim League. Something based on these lines may be the way out. The parenthetic was Cripps' note to himself and his mission colleagues, for he was always earning up with such brilliant solutions to what everyone else found insoluble problems. Cripps concluded this important note with an indication of how much he personally had been swayed and moved by Jinnah's unique advocacy, and how open his own mind remained to every shred of information. I have now heard from different sources apart from Mr. Jinnah. Then Jinnah did promise the Muslim League Council and Working Committee that he would not go into an interim government without parity. I believe that he really did have to deal with a great deal of resentment in his own party. That closing comment sounds positively sympathetic to Jinnah's position and the pressures under which he was fighting. He had weaned Cripps a long way from Nehru's side without Ray budging 1 inch from the position to which he clung so tenaciously. Just when Jinnah soared in this tete-a-tete with the mission's most brilliant pro-Congress member, Nehru, Patel and Gandhi were leaving negative personal impressions on the cabinet mission as well as the Viceroy, who viewed them alternatively as petulant and pettifogging hagglers. Nehru brought a list of 15 names for the interim council, but only 4 were from the League, 5 were Congress Hindus, 1 non-Congress Hindu, 1 Congress scheduled caste, and 1 Congress woman. Wavell rightly informed Nehru that this list would be quite unacceptable to Mr. Jinnah. Next morning, Jinnah arrived and gave the Viceroy some names for the government if the League came. Nehru returned that afternoon and seemed depressed, worked himself up to one outburst about Jinnah's refusal to meet Azad and described Jinnah as a wrecker. Later that evening, Patel returned and talked volubly without listening to any argument and sung a continuous hymn of hate against Jinnah and the League. He said that no government formed by the Viceroy would be acceptable. That day, Gandhi wrote to Wavell urging him to dare to do the right in choosing between Congress's list of nominees and the League's. You must make your choice of one horse or the other, the Mahatma advised the Field Marshal. So far as I can see, you will never succeed in riding 2 at the same time. Choose the names submitted either by the Congress or by the League. For God's sake, do not make an incompatible mixture and in trying to do so, produce a fearful explosion. Anyway, fix your time limit and tell us all to leave when that limit is over. I hope I have made my meaning clear. Wavell, however, was thoroughly disenchanted with Gandhi, whom he judged to be an exceedingly shrewd, obstinate, domineering, double-tongued, single-minded politician, and there is little true saintliness in him. In London, the British cabinet considered the military implications of a proposed breakdown in Indian negotiations. It rejected a proposal should Congress refuse to cooperate with the mission's plan to grant independence to central and southern India and fall back to the northwest and northeast, seeking to hold Pakistan. The Prime Minister authorized working out plans for the evacuation of Europeans but stressed the importance of safeguarding against leakage, the fact that any such plans were underway. The cabinet resolved in principle that no further women and children should be embarked for India. The British cabinet considered the foreign policy implications of any action by His Majesty's government, which appears to suggest that we are abandoning our position in India, and was warned by Foreign Minister Ernest Bevin that, as regards American public opinion, such sympathy as we might hope to get, and it would not be much, from liberal internationalist circle for a policy of abandonment would be infinitely outweighed to our disadvantage by the confirmation that far wider circles would see in such a policy of their assumption that we no longer had the means or resolution to face our responsibilities. To sum up, any appearance of abandonment of our position in India without a solution would weaken our world position. In New Delhi, Britain's cabinet mission continued laboring to put new interim government in place before India's summer heat melted the hearts and minds of those three exhausted wise men. On June 16, Wavell noted the delegation's final attempt to induce the children to play together is launched. All this huckstering and bargaining by Congress has shown their complete inability to take a broad statesman-like view. Jinnah has shown up well in comparison. Azad kept sending him long, detailed demanding letters. Gandhi kept meeting with Pethick Lawrence, Nehru with Cripps, Wavell with Jinnah. They were arguing over one or two names on an interim cabinet that never met, designed to keep a land of 400 million from drowning in an ocean of blood and poverty. Was it that all of them understood how hopeless a task they would face once they agreed to take power? Wavell was bored sick of them all by now, including Jinnah, with whom he reported a not very pleasant interview on June 18th, commenting, "The more I see of these Indian politicians, the more I despair of India." He said that the working committee were meeting tonight, but indicated that he thought we were being very weak with Congress and giving away to them on every point, and that he himself was being ground down beyond endurance. Jinnah gave me the impression of being rather depressed and tired, and of feeling that he had been rather let down. Cripps was prepared to ask Jinnah for a list of names for an entire interim government if Congress opted to reject the mission's proposal. Wavell, however, would be very chary of giving Jinnah responsibility for forming the whole government. He would prefer to ask Jinnah to come in on the basis that he would get the same share as now proposed. The responsibility for this interim government would be the viceroy's, and Jinnah would not be the prime minister, argued the offended viceroy, who thus proved his ability to play the game as well as any of the other children. Cripps responded that it seemed to him reasonable that Jinnah should have the opportunity of expressing his views as to the composition of the government. If Jinnah declined to serve on reasonable terms, his view was that we should then ask Congress to form a government. The viceroy said he could not agree. He would rather have a government of officials. The First Lord of Admiralty agreed with Wavell. Pethick Lawrence sympathized somewhat with Sir S. Cripps, but did not want to ride roughshod over the viceroy, and he decided if it came to choosing Jinnah, he would have to consult Attlee and his colleagues back home. The mission met with Nehru, Azad, Patel and Rajendra Prasad on Sunday, June 23rd. Pethick Lawrence explained that he and his colleagues quite appreciated the importance which Congress attached to the recognition of their national character, but they did hope that in this particular instance, Congress would see their way not to make a demand for the inclusion of a Muslim among the Congress representatives in the interim government, though without in any way creating a precedent or approving a principle. Nehru protested that the delegation appeared to start with the presumption that progress could only be made with the cooperation of the Muslim League. The Congress disagreed. Cripps tried to argue that Congress Muslims being included in provincial governments sufficed to demonstrate the national character of Congress. But Nehru would not budge, nor would Patel or Azad. Pethick Lawrence quite cogently remarked that the greatest obstacle to India going forward towards independence was the inability to get started. Suppose that the Congress representatives persuaded the delegation to agree to the inclusion of a Congress Muslims. If that occurred, he did not believe that Mr. Jinnah would accept it and there would be no coalition government. He believed it was really in the best interests of Congress and of India to act courageously and to begin by accepting the conditions under which a coalition would be possible. A solution of the communal problem in India had to be found, and for the parties to work together on practical problems provided the best hope. The wisdom of Pethick Lawrence's final plea made no positive impact, however. Nehru replied that the leaders of Congress had been seeking a solution of the communal problem for 30 years, but had always been undermined by League's refusal to recognize any Muslims who supported the national ideal, and the Congress could not desert those Muslims who had done so. Patel added that to capitulate on this point would force all Muslims out of the Congress. But on June 25, 1946, the Congress Working Committee finally resolved to accept the mission's plan of the last month, while expressing grave reservations about the limitations of the central authority as contained in the proposals, as well as the system of grouping of provinces. We are now precluded from trying to form an interim government with the participation of the Muslim League, but without that of the Congress, Wavell noted in his top secret memo to the mission after receiving the Congress response. And Congress will claim that in any fresh attempt, all the original bases and the assurances given to Mr. Jinnah have disappeared. We have in fact been outmaneuvered by the Congress, and this ability of Congress to twist words and phrases and to take advantage of any slip in wording is what Mr. Jinnah has all along feared and has been the reason for his difficult attitude. The success of the Congress, which he will feel has been mainly due to their continuous contacts with the mission, will increase his distrust both of the Congress and the mission and of the Viceroy. Tempers are frayed. The Muslim League feel that they have been betrayed, and the Congress feel that they have gained an advantage of which they will not be slow to make capital. Wavell would soon be left to form a caretaker government of officials, an alternative far more congenial to his nature and experience than trying to preside over a coalition cabinet would have been. That evening, the mission and Wavell met with Jinnah to show him the Congress resolution. That final meeting lasted almost 3 hours, till after 8 p.m. Wavell informed Jinnah that he would appoint a caretaker government for a short interval and they could go ahead with the Constituent Assembly and constitution making during that interlude since the cabinet mission was returning to England. Jinnah was thoroughly shocked by what he heard, asking, did he understand that the delegation did not now wish to form an interim government? He had understood that if one party rejected the offer of June 16th, we should go ahead with the other. The Muslim League had accepted. Mr. Jinnah said he disliked the suggestion for a postponement of the question of the interim government. He thought it was bad for the prestige of the delegation and also for his own prestige. It would destroy both. How ego shattering that moment of truth must have been for him. How frustrating after all these years, all these decades, once more to be told, not yet, still not quite ready for you, sir. Next month, perhaps, or next year. Would he live another year? It was a deplorable interview. Wavell reported. Nothing that, by the time we got down to real business, Jinnah was in a thoroughly evil mood, accused us of bad faith and giving way to Congress, and considered that he should be given the opportunity of entering the government. Next day, Alexander went round to see Jinnah to tell him how anxious he was not to part with bad feelings between them, but Jinnah's feeling of friendship, empathy, and trust for the British and all they had always stood for since his first trip to London would never quite be put back together again after that fatal fall.